Hello everyone. I come to you today with no particular plan in mind as to what to record about. I'm suddenly reminded I'm about to reach 1,000 subscribers. I suppose I should say thanks for subscribing. Kind of wild.
There's a lean to that audience, and then you become captured by the audience. Do you worry about the audience capture?
I worry about it. I don't feel as though I've had that audience capture take place, but I know it can happen, and I'm very open to being told ways in which it may be happening without me noticing.
It's also why we provide a number of different views on the platforms, many of which I disagree with, but are sort of within the generalized range of conservative thought. It's something I do have to think about every day.
Sam Harris is pretty good at this. He almost leans into it. He knows will piss off a lot of his audience. Sometimes you almost have to test the system. It's like if you feel, you almost exaggerate your feelings just to make sure to send a signal to the audience that you're not captured by them.
I definitely didn't expect to bring that up right off at all.
Trust your own temperament, and even if it's very far outside the mainstream.
It's my holy quest to break the fourth wall, and like everybody can do this.
Even a perverse willingness to force your sensibility on others at times.
I've been struck by a moment of clarity.
Claritas, which literally means brightness, the claritas forme, the clarity of form. It's the splendor of form. So you notice the concord, right, the consonantia, and then it sings to you. It's the splendor of the form that makes you say, ah, beautiful.
Structural functional organization isn't the same thing as shape, right? It's more like the formula of a thing. So the disclosure of the forms is not just a passive spectacle that we observe, but it is one in which we are inherently being transformed, and we are being conformed to a structure that, that we are participating in. So I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with the language, but do you understand there was a dimension missing in understanding it just as eidetic deduction?
A moment of clarity amidst confusion.
And a thick, sleepy obscurity. The clarity of its contents is severely diminished.
And I wish to communicate amidst this moment
I feel as if I am awakening from a bad dream.
as to add to its ontological inertia or something. I don't know.
The more people believe in a thing, the more persistent it is.
I talk a lot about this one particular idea, right? Fellowship, communion, friendship, intimacy, eye contact, vulnerability, bodies of people, and face to face, and not fucking text. You know, I think you get the vibe.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
You know?
so in a sense, we're always doing art.
Yes.
There's perhaps no other art through which one can experience man's relationship to the cosmos so vividly as one is able to do through the art of eurythmy.
And it kind of made me think of like, pray without ceasing.
So you can consider your life a language.
We see the capacity for eurythmy develop out of our capacity for speech.
You're living your life as though it was a prayer. It's actually speech and can be recognized as input by reality and
Eurythmy is indeed something that must appear in human evolution at this time, but there is no call for pride. For at present it can be a mere babbling compared with what it will become in the future.
You know, it's this faculty which we have, a phenomena which is important to the evolutionary process, basically.
In the Old Covenant, they hear the book, but now we see the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ.
Then I say, you don't perceive the glory, the face of Jesus Christ now
literally, historically, critically, with your objective mind as you analyze the facts of the past, you observe Christ now in the face of Jess, in the face of my children, in the face of Luke, in the face of your enemies. You don't see God in the abstract.
The older epistemologies are contact epistemologies, so that you know something by conforming to it.
Just paying attention, which is, I think, a bit what this conversation technology is doing.
We're always kind of exuding this music, and sometimes it directs people such that we're transparent to each other.
Right, and this is a participatory perspectival, right? It's the way you probably think you know your beloved. You don't just know them by having propositions or skills. Your identity is bound with theirs, and you also, their perspective has become part of your perspective on yourself, right?
It is the result of magic based on gnosis due to mystical experience.
That's living in the kingdom.
Right, which is an open space.
Right.
We mean that which does not find its origin within the closed circle of rationality, but is a gift from above, only accessible through accepting the gift as gift, that is, as something truly other than ourselves. And
for Tomberg, we learned the secret of closing the world from the serpent, but it was still our willing action to do what the serpent showed us to do.
Right.
Rationality. If we were to translate Florensky's terms into our own,
so I think about this vertical path, and that's where true authority comes from. You know, when somebody's really in line with their logos, being themselves, that's when people listen.
I mean, the mystical union with the divine is what the Grail story is about. I didn't want to say that right off at the beginning of the conversation, but folks, that's what the Grail is about.
That is, we are God revealed in the world. When you can see God in the world, you can also image God forth into the world. When you see God in
the teleological objective view. Here I use the term object in the most loose and abstract sense, akin to its use in mathematics.
Words are really nothing more than eurythmy. We are merely gesturing towards something.
If I am aiming to get up and go get some water, right? It's like my teleological actions are contextualized by that aim, by that narrative, and I act it out in my actions, right?
Eurythmy makes use of the most perfect instrument available for any artistic expression. It is the human being who is a microcosm, a whole world in a small space.
And how do we make it such that we are always pointing to the place where we are? You know, rather than pointing contrary, pretending to be something we're not, you know?
Right.
And when we think about magic, you know, I think that the most basic, foundational, fundamental, powerful, perhaps the technology most salient to me at least is, or the magic is the magic of language, you know, and that is associated with the bottom right of the cosmogram. Like the fire element we're kind of encountering it. The first technology was clothing, and I think about language as technology. So that's kind of how my cosmology pieces together in terms of this thing being important right now. Like we're in the midst of this glorification of language right now, this technology.
What I believe is a type of pre-culture motto language represented through memes, symbols, emojis.
And it's like a tool, you know. There's also a good way, like, of using this technology. I think it goes with the garments of skin symbolism and the first technology of clothing.
The mystery in the ornament has to do with the problem of showing and hiding.
How in the end technology is kind of redeemed
the outer part, or the technical part, or the outer part of the garments of skin, they become the expression of that which is inside.
It's like a pointer to that place. Does the ring of power wear us? Are we stuck behind our mask? Or are we transfigured with the glory of God, like the pattern of reality, the logos, the Tao shining through us? Boom, thy will be done. All this. That only can happen when you are being true to yourself or something.
And so we put a veil over it.
Yeah.
We put a veil over it, we put a veil over it, we put a veil over it until you're just beaten down and you no longer can see straight. And that's where we're at.
Everybody who's actually clicked on my channel page and tried to ascertain some sort of pattern, higher level patterns, will probably have caught on to that. I recognize a problem with my channel, which is that I have like a lot of videos and they're not particularly organized. Hidden gems way back in the doldrums somewhere. And I feel that it's a lot of jargon.
Jargon is our concepts. So when we jargonize something, when we turn something into a piece of jargon, we're coming up with a label for it. And it's sort of solid, and it's sort of a decision about this is what this thing is, this is what this thing means, this is what our definitions are. You hear it all the time in philosophy. Nietzsche's jargon would be like the Übermensch, or the will to power, or slave morality, or master morality, and all this. And if I'm talking to a Nietzschean, I might talk and be like, oh, master morality is, of course, the thing that we want to instantiate within the Übermensch. But, of course, Nietzsche also said that slave morality is really important, and fundamentally the will to power doesn't distinguish between which of these two moralities it will use in order to achieve Ubermensch status. These big rich concepts, of course you don't know what that means at all, but I do, and you're below me in this type of thing. And of course the way they start speaking is they start to put all this jargon into their speech, and to become these sort of jargonites, if you will, where they're actually trading on these concepts almost exclusively. They're throwing concepts around the room as if this is some type of performance, as if this is some type of victory, as if this is some type of help.
Like a lot of, forgive my smugness if that's what we could call it.
Keck Omega.
I talk a lot of jargon, but I was very caught up in this YouTube video making process.
If more people realize
any social media platform is a Skinner box, so basically an animal cage.
And haven't been doing much reflecting. Temporal expansion. Expand the present moment. When you have bad time sense, it's like it's just one thing after another, and you don't see it's kind of like constellating, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does this present moment actually mean? It's like a compression thing. It's like when something is super packed. It's been very moment by moment. Moment.
Like, there's something to say about Kairos.
That's a turning point in the course of history.
One does not manufacture Kairos by any stretch of the imagination.
It's been very moment by moment.
Time as chronos, the clock ticking.
But I suppose, in the spirit of honesty,
you get away with nothing.
I will say that I've struggled with a bit of a vape addiction. If you can... That may be a surprise to some, not so much to others.
you've been hit with a weapon of mind control that's taps into primal physiological bullshit, supernormal stimuli.
Self-deceptive, self-destructive behavior.
And this is not good. This is not, I think this is a particularly no good habit that one should try to avoid.
It probably goes without saying. The concept of breathwork goes back thousands of years across many cultures. Krishna specifically describes that regulating one's inhale and exhale is considered a divine offering to connect with Brahman, the supreme absolute reality.
And that was really that I shouldn't say was, but
why do you do it now? Now,
you know, that's been very much an oppressive force in my life.
This beer is going to solve my problem, right? Well, you don't think that, but we act that way, right? We act as if this thing is, I'm going to put all my desires and my, like, my being into this thing because I think it's going to provide for me something that it's not capable of providing. So, but when that happens, that's when you know, that's when we could say that the agency that's acting on you is something like demonic.
It displaces the human and possesses the body, right? But what the spirit does is fill and fulfill. So that where the spirit is most fully present, that creature is most completely itself, most truly itself. You know, the very hem of his garment is graced. His garments shine.
And but I was suddenly struck by the realization that it's more so just that
your perception can mislead you, your thinking can mislead you, your intuition can mislead you, your dreams can mislead you, your emotions can mislead you. There is no place. This is part of the, you know, the first noble truth. There is no place that is safe from the threat of self-deception. There's no place in the world. There's no place in yourself.
It's more so just
self-deceptive, self-destructive behavior.
It's more so just that I've been talking a lot.
Whenever you try to talk about ultimate reality,
even thinking about God, is it's always a step removed from actually being present in the world and loving people. Not for some utilitarian perceived end. You're just wanting to pay attention to them, which is great. To me, that's all you need to do. Like, that's what you should be doing.
Stuff's going on in that silence, which is 10,000 times more meaningful than ever could have happened if you just tried to speak in this crude, kind of like hammer blow language that we use.
It may be as important what is not being said as what is being said. Poetry, in fact, is something the right hemisphere is much better at.
And learning a lot.
I could take a walk somewhere and have nothing in my ears, no words. Your brain was clear to think about something that had come.
And posting a lot about things I talk about, as opposed to actually applying them or something like that. And also was a particular I Ching reading that I just did this evening.
One can put questions to the I Ching and expect to receive intelligent answers.
In order to have a kind of communication with the gods, prayer would be an act of theurgy. It's a disruption, if you like, to an otherwise limited human linear thought process that the ancients were really, really keen on.
Asked about what I should be paying attention to. And I got hexagram. Man, I don't know if I should put all this out there on the internet.
That one approach is to try and put enough pieces of what you actually are in public that it becomes almost impossible to portray you as anything other than you actually are. In other words,
whatever. Hexagram 47, oppression.
47, Kun, oppression, exhaustion. When one has something to say, it is not believed. When a strong man meets with adversity, he remains cheerful despite all danger, and this cheerfulness is the source of later successes. He who lets his spirit be broken by exhaustion certainly has no success.
Suffering, and the changing line said, suffering amidst wine and drink.
9 in the second place means, one is oppressed while at meat and drink. The man with the scarlet knee bands is just coming.
The second coming is not a physical event. It is the dwelling of Christ consciousness within humanity.
He will reappear in the etheric body, Christ who appears in the etheric body.
The man with the scarlet knee bands is just coming. It furthers one to offer sacrifice. To set forth brings misfortune. No blame. This pictures a state of inner oppression. Externally, all is well, one has meat and drink. But one is exhausted by the commonplaces of life, and there seems to be no way of escape. Then, help comes from a high place. A prince, in ancient China, princes wore scarlet knee bands, is in search of able helpers.
I do believe that we are called to participate in, the second coming.
But there are still obstructions to be overcome. Therefore, it is important to meet these obstructions in the invisible realm by offerings and prayer. To set forth without being prepared would be disastrous, though not morally wrong. Here, a disagreeable situation must be overcome by patience of spirit.
Suffering amidst wine and drink got me thinking about.
You've got food and drink, and it seems all outwardly okay, but the situation is actually oppressive.
And talking about sacrificing for a higher purpose.
It furthers one to offer sacrifice.
And also about how I still live with my parents. In case anybody was unaware of this.
It's like returning to a house you used to live in.
And can't be doing that forever, like these are things that must be sacrificed.
Whatever you had to give up, the highest,
Yes, and
I mean, that's true repentance. I mean, that's when you're willing to truly give that part up of yourself, whatever it was.
So I go outside and I lie on the ground like I used to back when I would have powerful mystical experiences on the regular.
I dissolved to a skeleton.
There would be times where I felt so in tune with things and the flow of things, and it would be like the wind would speak to me almost.
In what way is God not talking to me? And if I'm not getting the message, it's certainly not because he's not being clear.
It's so hard to describe these types of things.
Shamanic initiation, and there's dissolution to a skeleton first, and then like a death, a symbolic death, or experienced as an actual death, and then bang, up into the realm of the gods, and then they come back. It's a very old idea.
And sure enough, God still responds.
For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened.
You
have to aim at it.
Silence and receptivity.
If you listen to people, they will tell you the weirdest bloody things so fast you just cannot believe it.
A prayerful attitude.
The sacramental attitude of earlier times must return.
Attention.
When you pay attention, there are these moments where everything aligns. It's like a flash of that perfect union of heaven and earth. And it lasts for half a second and then it's gone.
Paying attention to the phenomena around you. It's crazy what happens when you pay attention.
The kind of attention we pay changes the world. It changes what is there to find. To pay attention is the greatest act of generosity.
And, I was struck by this moment of peace, clarity, connecting some dots through my experiences, recognizing the things that I should be paying attention to and the relevance thereof.
We become increasingly dependent.
And, I figured I'd just make a video.
The more people believe in a thing, the more persistent it is.
And, but I suppose one thing is that in my recent malaise, if we so to speak, that I've kind of taken my eye off the ball. You got to keep your eye on the ball, which is, that it's to do with immanentizing the eschaton.
The immanentization within is, let's say, simply trying to walk the right path.
And obviously I've spoken about this in the past. I sense that people are very touchy about immanentizing the eschaton, but I think that's maybe what we're discussing here. I'm basically talking about how the kingdom is hand and we need to like be in right relationship with it.
Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
ASAP.
Or change the disposition of your soul so that your own faculties open the spiritual world to you.
Or something like that. And also, what does that look like, you know? And I have this vision of
what I call the transcendental object.
You know, we talk about the kingdom.
The kingdom of heaven is always there. That's the thing. I think that's also what Christ is trying to help us see, is that it never goes away. In some ways, when we don't see it, or when we're not participating in it, or when we're not fully engaged with it, that's the illusion, right? That's the lie.
But it's also, I think about this is connected with how kind of Rudolf Steiner talks about etheric vision insofar as it's related to the second coming.
Human beings will be able to perceive the much more real etheric body of the Christ.
Not necessarily the final consummation of the universe.
The consummation is the idea that that flash could be extended forever.
It comes down from heaven. It's that it's not our, we don't build it.
And I believe that this transcendental object is casting an enormous shadow over the human historical landscape.
It's when everything aligns all the time, which obviously isn't something that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's something to work towards.
The closest approximation of that, I guess, is constantly striving towards it.
The heavenly Jerusalem, which is now it's really just the entire world that is filled with glory. But the hint of that, or the promise of that, is exactly like Aidan said, is that this garment that Christ wore is now no longer let's say a dead garment of skin, but is now filled, like it's full of the very glory.
Not necessarily the final consummation of the universe, but at least the shifting of the ion into Aquarius.
It takes 25,920 years to complete it, the whole cycle.
And the development of new faculties which allow us to abide in the kingdom and perceive the spiritual world. Embody. It's just, we need to say enough is enough, you know, and say, I live in a spiritual world. And we look around and we say, wow.
And to see the things that are actual gods.
Perceive the spiritual world, including Christ, the Logos,
whose birth we celebrate in the Christmas mystery, actually vibrating and pulsating in all things that happen, in every event.
The pattern of patterns.
The incarnational principle, let's say. So it's like it's heaven, earth, and then a point that joins it together. And then once that happens, the way it joins together, it looks like a mountain because it gathers multiplicity and potential into a point. Like that's the pattern, you know. That's basically the pattern.
Is that pattern present in pretty much every pattern that we encounter, whether we want it to be there or not? That union of heaven and earth?
Yeah. There's no other way. So you could understand it like the meta pattern is the way the pattern joins with a particular. Like that's the meta pattern. And so it's a self-same pattern. Like it's a pattern about how patterns fit with the world. Like that's what makes it strange for people to understand. It's like it's not an arbitrary pattern. Like it's the pattern of how things exist.
The through line of reality.
He's the standard by which all the multiple aspects get let's say compared to, or
the through line.
The through line. There you go.
The through line is found in the multi-aspectual. Yeah.
The ground of being.
Anything you can recognize as having being, you know, has that. The logos of that thing, ultimately, it's just the logos. Like it's just one.
A teleological object is an aspect thereof, a refracted hue of that white light.
The truth, it is the way, it is the originary fundamental principle of reality, of being itself. It's the fundamental pattern of life that is available for us to follow and to use as a compass and a guide. The Taoists in Lao Tzu, the ancient Greeks, they all would see and feel and intuit the Logos before ultimately became made flesh in Jesus Christ.
And perhaps, at least that's how I see it. And I lost my train of thought. Yes, what does this look like? So yeah, it's maybe not the final consummation of reality. However, at least to do with the time period we're in.
This is Christmas. This Christmas that we just had. So the Sun and Pluto move into Aquarius on the same day.
And I think it has to do with this etheric vision style thing that Steiner talks about.
Human beings can acquire the new faculty of perception in the etheric realm, beholding Christ in the etheric. We also experience time through the etheric body, that the physical body becomes an image of the etheric.
Very similar, obviously, to what Galahad is talking about as constellation.
The infancy of a new form of perception. We perceive more future and more past in the present. An extraordinary evolutionary advantage.
I hear my mother walking down the hall. And what does that look like?
The cube may be seen as a symbol of the ego, and the octahedron as the quaternitarian symbol of the self and eternity.
Etheric vision, we're talking about higher dimensional perception, right?
Time as just another dimension.
Einstein sort of puts the capstone on it. He's the one who says, all of this makes much more sense if there just is no ether. It is undetectable.
And what are we talking about here? Okay, so it also in terms of constellation.
The collective unconscious and implicate order are two names for one thing.
The implicate order is a noetic realm. It is, in other words, the ether, which remained ever elusive to scientists of the 19th century, who were unable to conceptualize the ether as being anything other than a kind of materialistic fluid substrate.
Our language normally, and indeed mathematics, tends to chop it up into sort of static bits. But actually there's this underlying flow, which he called the holo movement.
He's using holographic to express the idea of being created in the image of, right? Of being an icon.
It's not in terms of Steiner's way of thinking about it, you have the physical body, the etheric body, and the etheric body is kind of, I perceive it as kind of to do with the temporality of view.
In the eschaton. Right. Whereas the good angels have already passed that event horizon for themselves,
and they're trying to draw us towards it in the case of the guardian angels.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's
but
interesting.
In Bulgakov, what he suggests is that...
And the guardian angel is kind of like what we were just saying about the logos of you. It's like your soul. It's like that's when it's the ideal version of you, the kind of white stone name, perfect. Maybe it's like even the version of you that's already finished in the future or something like that.
Sure.
It's kind of hovering above
your highest self or whatever.
The metatemporal you, in a sense.
One then learns to unroll, in quotes, again, what one lived through long ago.
But, that's brutalizing it. It's also, I think it's to be seen in kind of your temporal being,
I think that
mysticism means looking past the ephemeral and the everyday towards what is eternal and absolute in events. And there you see the grand gestures that people either are or aren't performing, of sacrifice, of revenge, of execration, of really whatever. Each story by Bloin, there are 30 of them in each collection, sort of centers around an act that somebody performs, whether good or bad, noble or ignoble. And it's the symbolic content of that act that is the focus. And that's where the mysticism comes in, because you can see a glimpse of the eternal through the fleeting gestures that are made in this world.
Essentially, we're talking about, in terms of constellation as well, we're talking about ascertaining these patterns.
It's not just that you recognize the rhythms or something, but you like embody them when you listen to it or something,
which give you a higher dimensional view of what you're looking at.
Perhaps this is why St. Paul said that we will judge the angels. They are not somewhere else. They're right in front of us. And the less we believe that, the less clearly we will see them.
And that doesn't mean abstracted away from something.
It's not just that which is above is abstract, you know.
Encoded within ordinarily accessible reality is something else. An encrypted landscape. A world which can't be seen unless you radically reconfigure your mind.
You don't see God in the abstract, in the eye of your mind. You do, but that's also manifest in creation, in people, and down to anything. It's like every grain of sand, the eye of a flower.
When you get to the place that you can see a universe in an ice cube, that's when you're really seeing. And that's what an artist is someone who really learns to see. We learn to see things with those kinds of eyes, that we can see all of his beauty in every single thing that we look at.
That means seeing it more deeply in what it is or something. Man, I'm worried that this is getting back into the jargon as I was talking about.
Jargon.
But so I'm going to try and wrap it up here, which is yeah, I think I'm going to make a video that really draws together some of the previous videos, clips and stuff, and my conversations. And I'll also probably record some verbiage and or video, because in my fleeting moment, hopefully not fleeting moment of clarity, I've been struck by the imminence.
We're at the precipice of the biggest fucking thing that's ever...
and how nicely does it fit with the Book of Revelation? The imminence of this teleological object.
Calling us forward, as it were, and which is
hovering above.
That which is above, which comes down as
the shadows these objects cast upon time.
Water.
Our current time period.
Welcome to the new Ion.
And I believe it's about time we start talking about
jargon,
what a right relationship with that teleological object actually looks like. Some bold words to end on.
Trading on these concepts almost exclusively.
And they're looking over the bow of the boat saying, is that guy still walking on water? God, that's amazing. How's he do that? See, how's he doing that? And he's like, well, he's God. And you're like, oh, wow. We could develop a creed out of this. Let's come up with some things. He does this, he is that. Oh, wow. We've got a creed. How about we all say it to ourselves and then we'll be Christian? We'll be like, that's not what it was about, right? You were supposed to get out of the boat and ontologically become him. That was the whole point.
All right. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to take some deep breaths, especially if you're addicted to nicotine. It's always good every once in a while. Get some of that pneuma.
These words mean both spirit and breath.
That good old spirit.
Words are magic, and we all... Oh, no. Okay.
That prana, baby.
Woo! Breathing in that good ass prana, baby.
And don't forget to pay attention.
Pay attention.
Particularly to your loved ones.
You pay attention to your kids, like real attention.
Yes.
That is all. Thanks, and you will see me again soon if you happen to stop by here. That is all.